Okay, so today we are going to discuss on how are we going to save records into our database. Okay, so based on our contacts database, based on our previous video, so I have here a link. If ever the user don't have any account yet, so we are going to let the user to register through this link. So when the user clicks on this link, so it is going to navigate to a user registration page wherein the user can input the username, password, and the full name. When the user clicks on save, it is going to save to the TBL users. Okay, so don't be confused on the TBL contacts and the TBL users. Contacts are the contacts of the users. So in our users, so we have for the structure is we have the username, password, and the full name. So as you can see, all of them are varchar. Okay, so that is why we have here username for the username, password, and the full name. Okay. So what will happen is that when the user clicks on save, it is going to contact or connect to an API that is going to receive these three data that we have. Then it is going to connect to the database and subsequently going to save into TBL users. Okay, so first we're going to go to our API. Okay, so I have here I used an include command into our headers. Okay, since as you can see here in our login, so we're calling here for the header. Also with our the login and get contacts, we have the header. So that is why instead that we are going to call or we are going to type in each of the page, okay, so I have created here a headers.php. Then I'm just going to call that or include it here in my code. So in this case, in our register.php, so we have included the file headers.php. Then as usual, we have the connection. So next is we are going to get the data passed from our API client. Okay, so we have here the username, password, and the full name. But as you can see, instead of trying to have get, so we are going to use now the method post. Okay, so why post? Because we are going to save it into our database. So if ever that we are just going to retrieve records, we're going to use get. Okay, so if ever we are going to save, so we are going to submit a form. If you are still familiar with your HTML, so we have there a form. So we're going to have the method post. So that is why we have here post. Okay, then after we have retrieve those data, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to create our SQL statement. We have insert into. Okay, so as you can see, insert into TBL users. Then we have the three columns from our table. Then with the values with the placeholders, username, password, and the full name. So next is we're going to have the prepare statement. Okay, so we are going to have created here an object. Okay, then using now our SQL statement on lines number 9 and number 10. Okay, so then we are going to bind parameters for the three here. Okay, so we assign now username. Okay, so we have the username into our placeholder username and so on. Okay, so they have now their own values, then execute. Okay, so once we have executed, if there are no errors, it is going to return a row count. Okay, how many records have been affected? So here for our return value, if ever that the row count is greater than 0, we are just going to agree that we are going to return the value of 1. If ever there are no records, meaning just in case there are errors, okay, so the value of the row count will be 0. So therefore we're going to return 0. Then the last is we have here echo, or we are now going to return whatever would be our return value. So I want you to take note of this. If ever successful, so we are going to return the value 1. If not, it would be 0. Okay, so that's for our register.php. So next is we're going to have our this one here. Now, okay, so into our main or into our login page, so we have here, okay, at the end, so I have the text, okay, for to account yet, then register here. How are we going to make this text clickable? So we have the gesture detector. Okay, so the whole thing here, this block of code is actually responsible for this one here. At the same time, on tap, once we are going to tap or click on this text, it is going to navigate us to register.dart. Okay, so I have already created here register.dart, in which that will be the class being called when the gesture detector is tap. Okay, so when I tap on this, so we have here now our page for register.dart. Okay, so we have it here. Okay, so we have, I'm just going to pass through with our UI. So we have the user registration. So we have here user registration. Then we have the first text field for the username. So we have here our username, then a space with our size box. Then we have another text field for the password. So we have here our password. And the last is we have our text field, another text field for the full name. So as you can see, we have here the 3 text fields. Okay? And the last is we have here our elevated button that says save. Okay, so with an icon. So by the way, this is how are you going to have an icon. So I just created here actually a row. Then I have inside the row, we have the 2 widgets, icon and the text. By the way, in between them, so we have a size box. Okay, so what will happen is that when the user is going to click on save, it is going to call register.php. Okay, so we're going to create here, okay, just avoid method save. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do is actually to define our URL. Now, instead that I'm going to define URL here, we could actually have it also. We're going to parse it directly. Okay, so we are going to create here or initialize a URI variable of the a variable of type URI. So URI is equal to URI.parse then or URL. Oops. HTTP, then we have the localhost / Flutter / API, and by this time we're going to have register.php. Okay, so next is we are going to define this. Okay, so we have 3 parameters. We have the username, password, and the full name. So what we're going to do is we're going to just create a map of type string, comma, dynamic. I'm just going to call it okay, just anything. In my case, I'm going to call it data or maybe body or whatever. Okay. Then first is we have the username. Then what is the variable that contains, or what object that contains our username? Going back is we have for our username, we have the username controller, in which they are actually defined on line 13 to line 15. Okay, for the controller. So here I'm going to assign username controller dot text. Okay. The next is we're going to have our password. Okay. And the last is we have our full name. What's the problem here? Okay, we have no equal sign. Set it there. Okay, so we have now defined, we have now defined our data. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually to pass now this data into our API. So how are we going to pass this data? So we're going to use our HTTP dot, okay, going back. We are now going to use post. Okay, so in our previous video, we used get. Okay, so by this time now, we are not going to use get. Why? Because the API is expecting us to, or instructing us to use post, the method post. So that is why here, instead of trying to have the get, so I'm going to use the post. Okay, so we have here the syntax. First is we're going to have our URI. The next is for the body, which is our body is actually our data here. Okay, so I'm going to have my data. Okay, then we are going to assign response. Okay, whatever will be the return value, it could be either 1 or 0, that would be assigned to the variable response. Okay, so we have an error. Why? Because it is a future, and it said if ever it is a future, so we must have to use the keyword await. And if ever we use the keyword await, so we must have to define our method or function to be asynchronous. Okay. So next is we are now going to validate if response that status code is equal to 200. By the way, if ever it is not 200, it could be 404, it could be 500, and so on. Those are errors. Okay, so here I'm just going to have the else. So we're just going to display whatever would be the status code. Okay, later on. So if ever it is successful in calling or in contacting our API, our API endpoint, so the next thing that we're going to validate is if response that body is equal to 1. Okay, because if ever it is equal to 1, so therefore it is successful. It's a problem. Okay, it must be double equal 1. And if ever it is equal to 1, so therefore it is successful. By the way, I have created here public functions dart inside the folder functions. So the purpose of this is actually to contain any public functions. So, but so far, as of now, I have only one function within it. It is going to display an alert dialog, so that we are not going to keep on typing the whole block of code here. So we're just going to pass the context, the title, and the content, and then this function then is going to display an alert dialog. Okay, so we have here our title and our content. Okay, and when the button is being clicked, so we're just going to have to pop this dialog box. Okay, so that is why here we are just going to call show message box. Okay, then the same context that we're going to use. Then for the title, we're going to have We're just going to have a success. Then for, by the way, content is must be a string. Okay, so here we're going to have you have successfully registered. Okay, but if ever it is not equal to 1, so we're just going to show message box. Okay, so we're just going to tell the user that registration failed. Please try again later, or whatever. Okay. Then we have another else. So if this else actually belongs to this one here, so we're just going to display show message box, same context, then error. Then I'm just going to have the server returns error. Okay. If ever 404, it's going to say the server returns a 404 or 500 or whatever would be the error. Save. Now let us review. First, we have defined here our URI. That is to define actually the location of our API endpoint. Okay, which is now at this moment we're going to have register.php. Then we have defined our form data. Okay, so this will be the data that we're going to pass into our API endpoint. Then on line number 101, this is the actual code wherein we are then going to submit the data defined here into this API endpoint here. Then just to validate if the status code is equal to 200, then validate again if the response is equal to 1. I think we have, by the way, we have the type of write operand int is in a subtype of string. Okay, because we have here the body here is this is actually a string. Okay, so we have there string and 1 is an integer. Okay, so I'm just going to have here actually we could have it like that, string and a string. But if ever you don't want it, then we could have it also one that okay, we can have it also like this one. So it's up to you if you are going to have the quotation marks for the string or just that the strings, so they are the same. Okay, so save. By the way, we still have to call on the button. Okay, so we're going to call the function save. On press save. Okay, save, then reload. Oops, there's an error. Oh, we have no semicolon there. Okay, reload. Okay, so here our main or our login page. So click on the register link. Then we have here our username. So let us say we're going to have Mickey. Then password would be mouse. Then we have the full name, Mickey Mouse. Then save. Okay, save here. You have successfully registered. I can click on OK. Take note, username is Mickey and the password is mouse. Okay, then back. Then to check if ever we have successfully registered or saved our account into the database, so we're going to log in. So Mickey, then we're going to have mouse. Login. Okay, so as you can see, we have here now Mickey Mouse. So we have successfully registered. So if ever I'm going to have for the password is 12345 login, so invalid username or password. Okay, but if ever we're going to have, okay, I'm going to register another one. I think we don't still have, we have no Donald yet. How about Free Willy? Then 12345 for the password. Free Willy. Okay, save. So again, we have here success. Then Willy 12345. Log in. So we have successfully logged in. Okay. So the only thing that is new here is actually we have the post method. Okay, the post method, and in our API is we have the super global post, and the SQL statement is we have here our insert. Okay, so basically the procedure with what on how are we going to save and to get records are basically the same. Okay, so pass the data, whatever will be the required data. But if ever we're going to insert, we're going to use post. But if ever we're going to get, we're going to use get. Okay, select, get, then we have insert and post. Okay, so we are going to have this one here. Okay, so that's all for today, and I'll see you on the next video.